Let's learn about loop patterns. There are so many ways to use for loops. In this lesson, we will review a few common patterns. These patterns shown are just starting points. Think of them as templates that can be adapted and combined to solve more complex problems. We have a list of items and want to know how many there are. A simple algorithm is, starting with an initial value of 0, to add 1 for each element we see to a count variable. When the loop is finished, the count variable will have the length of the list. We have a list of numbers and want to add them all up. The plus operator can only take 2 items at a time, however. Therefore, we add each element one at a time to a sum variable, which is also initialized to 0. As you can see, the sum pattern is similar to the count pattern, except instead of adding 1, we are adding the iteration variable. The sum and count patterns are both more specific examples of the accumulator pattern. In general, this pattern allows us to start with an initial value and use any function or operation that takes in 2 values. This pattern can also be applied to numbers, but it also works for strings, booleans, and even lists. This process of accumulation is sometimes known as reducing or folding a list. What happens when we accumulate a list? If we start with an empty list as our initial value, and append each value one at a time, we end up with a copy of the original list. As we're appending values, we can also modify them. For example, you could double each value from the old list, or convert each temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius. We have a list of numbers, and want to ignore some of them according to a rule. By embedding an if statement inside the loop, we can optionally include or not include elements in our accumulation. The filter pattern is very compatible with other patterns. The last pattern is used to find the highest or lowest element in a list. At first, it may appear similar to the filter pattern because it uses an if statement. However, you can see that instead of comparing each element to a constant value, the conditional compares each value to the accumulated value. Using this pattern, the accumulated value, in this case a maximum, will end up as the highest value in the list. Novices always struggle with what goes inside or outside of a loop body. Remember, every statement inside the body is executed for each element. Only put things inside if they should happen for each element. The patterns can help you keep track of where things go, but ultimately, you have to think critically to know.